Every once in a while I get an idea and I'm like, ooh, okay, that's a pretty good idea. Like, I'm gonna put that at the top of my list and we'll do it in a few days and I think it's gonna be great. But then a day later, Tekking does a video just like it. And if that wasn't enough, 2 days later, Brago does a video just like it. I guess great minds think alike, and at this point I think I'm late to the party, but I still want to talk about it. And what I want to talk about specifically is the Roger Pirates and other legends of the One Piece world possibly reappearing in the story later. And it just goes to show with how many people want to talk about this, how much Oda has built up this world, where he's built up not only the current world and the structure and all the people and the different islands and stuff, but also the history of the world with the previous generation and the other legends that are still around to this day, and how interested we are by those characters. Like, Marineford was amazing for numerous reasons. Like, first, it showed Luffy against the current top tier people of both the Marines and also the pirates, like Whitebeard. You saw Yonko crew and also the top heads of the Marines, and how Luffy stacked up against those guys and how he really wasn't ready for that kind of level of action yet. It showed Luffy had a long way to go, but it still gave us a glimpse of that older generation. Whitebeard, Garp, and Sengoku, they didn't really even get involved that much until later on in the war, but those moments were hype and it really showed the true strength of those guys. And with those three always being associated with Roger, and especially Whitebeard saying that he always went toe to toe with Roger, it put Roger in perspective on what kind of person he is and how strong he was, instead of just this figure that everybody wanted to be, and the Pirate King, and like this legend, like this mythical legend that everybody wanted to follow and be. Instead, it gave him a little more character development. And now the current story is obviously on the move. We're focusing on the newer generation on both sides. We're talking about the pirates with Luffy and the worst generation starting to take over, especially at the peak of Wano here. We have the two of the Yonko going up against several members of the worst generation, and even on the Marine side, you have newer generations starting to take over. There's new fleet admiral, there's new admirals. I'm sure there's going to be more changes coming in the future, and I even made an entire video about that, the next generation Marines. Check that out if you haven't seen it already. And don't get me wrong, I obviously want to see the next generation take over and then be at the forefront. I don't want to get the older generation involved and have them like do some lifting for the newer generation. I think it's time for the newer generation to step up, but at the same time, there's still so much I want to see from the older generation. Like, Oden's flashback gave us a glimpse again of those guys in their prime, and I just want to learn more about them. I crave more of that content, and to be honest, there's just a lot of characters I want to see more of, and like see what they're doing now and more of their story, and like them reappearing in the story. So let's just break this down, and I want to start with the Roger Pirates, and let's just start with Rayleigh, because that's like who Tekking focused on in his video, so let's just get that out of the way first. Now, Rayleigh is actually one of the people that got a lot of shine. We saw him in Sabaody, both showing off his power and also what kind of person he is, what kind of life he is living now. We also got some glimpses of him in different flashbacks, the Oden flashback and also his flashbacks with Roger, and how he was thinking how Roger was similar to Luffy. And even in the current story, he's still getting brought up here and there because he trained Luffy for 2 years. So like every time Luffy is showcasing a new skill or like what he's learning and what he's improving on, Rayleigh comes back with a flashback and to give perspective, but also builds on like his character of how like strong and knowledgeable he is. So Tekking mentioned in his video Rayleigh coming in only as like a last ditch thing of like him needing to help Luffy, and I generally agree with it. I think it could work with Rayleigh just not showing up in any of the battles anymore, but I am under the belief that in the final war and the final battle, I think Luffy and the Straw Hats and everybody will be going up against the world government. That's who I believe will be the final villain, and in that final war, I think Oda is getting out his bag and throwing in all the characters. Rayleigh will be included in that. I think it would be a waste for this final grand battle, grand war, to probably topple down the world government. Like, it would be a disservice for Oda not to bring out all these characters that he has developed and built and expanded upon through these 20 plus years it will be at that point. And one of Luffy's main things is his ability to make friends and recruit allies and just his charisma, right? Luffy's is a man amongst men. Not really. He's not really that at all. But still, even though he's a goofy kid, he's able to like understand people very well, and that's one of the reasons he's my favorite character. And like he's able to to recruit allies really well. So in this final battle, why not have all the people he's been associated with show up and help him? Sure, it's gonna drag out the arc a little bit, and that final arc you might think it's gonna be too long, but at that point, One Piece is ending. Let's just get as much content as we can, right? Like, it's been 20 plus years at this point. It's the final arc. Just make it hella long. Make it 200-300 chapters. Why not? So yeah, Rayleigh, I only really see him returning towards the end in this final battle. I don't think he's gonna get involved even now with like Kaido and Big Mom, two big Yonko that Luffy is going up against, but I feel like Rayleigh's like, okay, I helped you, I trained you, I let you like get off the island safely. It's now your turn to go do your thing and become the Pirate King. I'm not gonna interfere with your adventures. So the only thing I see him showing up at is this final Grand War, and maybe we get a little more like seeing him in an actual fight instead of him like kind of held back trying to fight Kizaru but really just worrying about the Straw Hats. Just a little more Rayleigh action is really all I would want. But a person who I want to see more of is Scopper Gaban, because he really hasn't been shown in the present story at all yet. But in the Oden flashback, you saw how clean that dude looked, okay? He was rocking the shades, he was younger, dual-wielding axes, just a badass design all around. I know if he shows up now, man will be like 75 years old, and he's probably using those things to like cut lumber now, but like, I still want to see him. I think he would still be a badass introduction. And it was really showcased in the Oden flashback that he and Rayleigh and Roger are like the top three. It kind of had that like monster trio vibe pre-time skip of Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. And Scopper and Sanji kind of have a similar vibe of like them being both like this badass gentleman kind of vibe. So I want to see what kind of person Scopper is, what his personality is. I'm sure he'll have a little gag. Like even Rayleigh liked young girls. That was his thing. And he was like this like old man just trying to get around. He got caught by like as a slave because he was just around trying to gamble and pay off his debts. So I want to see what Scopper's doing nowadays. How is he living his life? How strong is he? Because I'm guessing he's hella strong as well. Like, what is a man of that caliber doing at this point in his life? And I feel like he really has to show up. With how prominent he was showcased as a member of the Roger Pirates, I feel like at some point he will get a prominent role. Not like he's gonna like help like the Straw Hats fight a lot of people or anything, and not even like the amount of shine that Rayleigh got, but I feel like he should get some kind of role where we learn a little more about him and get to interact with him for a good period of time. One of the ideas being brought up more recently is that he is actually in Wano right now. He was the person talking to Marco, and he was the person, same exact person, and talking to Crocus in that cover story. And I brought this up in my most recent video about Yamato and the fourth poneglyph, about how Scopper could know where the next poneglyph is, and him being in Wano could be like the next hint, and tying that with Yamato having Oden's journal, that could tie together and lead him to another island of where the fourth poneglyph is. Either way, I just want to see Scopper in more action and like him showing up. It could be in Elbaf, it could be he is with Shanks or something. I need to see some Scopper Gaban action. Now the rest of the Roger Pirates is even more interesting because there's actually a good amount of them. Like if we don't count Inu, Toki, or Nekomamushi, there's still 29 other Roger Pirates. And we saw a little bit of them in the flashback, but Oda actually broke them all down in SBS 96, and I'm probably showing all of them right now, scrolling. Shout out to Artur from the Library of Ahara for translating all this, but Oda showed their like initial sketches, their full designs, and also their names. Now there's a lot of them, and I'm sure they were all pretty strong because that's just a 29-person crew that managed to become the crew of the Pirate King, so I'm sure all of them are decently strong, and I'm very curious what they're doing nowadays. I don't feel like they're all gonna be showcased because there's so many of them, and that would be a lot of new characters to introduce, but at the same time, Oda did sketch them, right, and like kind of put them in backgrounds of flashbacks. It wouldn't surprise me for Oda to like all of a sudden introduce the entire crew either. I feel like a better way to do it and for it to get fleshed out is to have Scopper or like maybe one or two of the other Roger Pirates show up in the story later and kind of just like give us some information of what those other guys are doing. Some of them might be dead. Like it's been a very long time since they were like pirates. They could be like 70, 80 years old. Maybe like they passed away of like a disease like Roger did already. So just some backstory on them would be useful, and I definitely think we should get that. But I did notice two members, Sunbel and Nozdon, have been more prominent. One of the big reasons for that is like they're both pretty big and they have really unique designs, so I feel like probably Oda was like really focusing on them to kind of add to the element of the Roger Pirates. But at the same time, if you have their design kind of fleshed out, why not have them play like a smaller role? Maybe not as a big role as like a Scop or Gabon would get, but like them actually just showing up, interacting with the Straw Hats a little bit, giving us a little bit more information, maybe some flashback stuff and a little more information on the current whereabouts of the other Roger Pirates. I feel like that would be a good way to flesh out the Roger Pirates and not like showcase the entire crew, but still give us a little more information. Also, I'm gonna count the Oro Jackson as a Roger Pirate because sure, why not? The Gold-Mary and the Thousand Sunny and technically Straw Hats. And the Oro Jackson definitely has to reappear. Like, what happened to that ship? That egg, okay, I talked about in my last video. I need to know what that egg is. And even going beyond the mystery of the egg, that ship has to reappear because that interaction with Franky discovering that ship and seeing that ship will be a pretty monumental moment. That's the ship that Tom built with Great Dong, right? That's his mentor that built the ship. And really, Franky was inspired by Tom's action there of building that great pirate ship and inherited his will and his own dream of building the Thousand Sunny, a ship that could sail across 1,000 seas and reach the final island. Him seeing the Oro Jackson, the only ship to do it in the first place, is definitely a moment we need to see in that interaction. And of course, like what happened to that ship and the egg, and as well, like we needed to get that explained a little more. So that could definitely tie in with Scopper Gabon and the other Roger Pirates, but I definitely feel like that ship has to reappear in the story. Now let's talk about another legendary pirate crew, the Rocks Pirates, one of the greatest pirate crews of all time. It had Whitebeard, Rocks himself, Big Mom, Kaido, Shiki, and let's just start there with Shiki. Now Shiki is a canon character, but his story is kind of weird because he got introduced essentially in like a side story in a movie. And I don't really know much about Shiki because I didn't see the movie, but I did do my research. I read chapter 0 of his whole story and like what happened in the past. So Shiki was one of the top pirates of Roger's generation as well. He was part of the Rocks crew. He went head to head with Roger a lot. There was the great battle of the Ed War where Shiki had Roger outnumbered, but then a great storm came by, and then that's how he ended up getting like a helm stuck in his head as well. And Shiki was respected by those top pirates of that generation and also respected other pirates as well, like Roger. Like when Roger got captured and was about to be executed, Shiki was so mad that somebody that he respected as a pirate, he went to Marineford and started killing Marines and said, how could somebody of Roger's caliber be captured by the likes of you? That's not possible. And then he duked it out with Garp and Sengoku, but he lost that battle. There's 2 of them and 1 of him, and then he got captured and thrown and impaled down. But to add to the legend of Shiki, man cut off his own legs and became the first ever prisoner to escape from impaled down. So now he is out there in the One Piece world somewhere, right? And that like makes a lot of people feel like he has to return and do something. And in the canon spin-off story type of thing in chapter 0, he did like have a motivation to return. He said he was gonna have this great 20-year plan or whatever, and like he was gonna return and bring hell on earth and kind of thing. So him returning to the story, it would actually make a lot of sense, but at the same time, he's been mentioned so little in like the main canon story. It's just been glimpses of like him being mentioned being in the Rocks crew. Nobody really talks about him that much. Even like in the Oden flashback wasn't mentioned at all. So him coming back and all of a sudden being like a antagonist just doesn't add up. Like I think it could work if One Piece were supposed to go on for like a longer period of time. Maybe we're talking like 10-15 years at this point. But with Oda's last update, he said he's about 85% through the story, which I don't believe. That would make it like another 5 years of One Piece. I don't think it's gonna be like that. It's probably gonna be closer to 10 years, but to me that's gonna be Oda like dragging out his arcs and building like more characters in. But for Shiki to like all of a sudden reappear and like enact his great plan, that would be another complete arc that he has to like use and introduce Shiki with. And with how little Shiki's been set up, I feel like if that were to happen, like maybe he would do it in a side story or he's saving it for a movie or something, because Shiki is essentially came off of a side story in a way, although he's canon. So his situation is just really weird. Like, don't get me wrong, I would love an entire arc dedicated to Shiki, but I feel like some people would get mad at that and think like it just doesn't fit in. It would like slow down the main story progression. So Shiki, while he is set up to return, I don't think he's gonna return in a big role as like a main antagonist or something. It could be a little thing where he shows up at the end as well. But yeah, it's a really weird one because he kind of came off of a side story, so I really don't know about Shiki. I would love to see more of him, but I really just don't see how it will work out. Next, I want to talk about two other Rocks pirates that were introduced, Silver Axe, and Tekken would yell out Wang Ji, which is very like iconic at this point. But if we're going by the proper pronunciation, and I grew up in China, Chinese was my first language, Wang Zhi would be the proper pronunciation. Actually, depending on like the syllables and stuff, it could be like 16 different ways to pronounce it. I really don't know, but we're just gonna call him Wang Zhi. But anyways, Oda introducing these guys. Is it just to give it like a little more element to the Rocks crew? Or like, why not have these guys reappear later on, especially if you have somebody like Wang Zhi, like based off an actual like pirate in China? Like, that's a very interesting premise to me, and I want to learn more about that person. And Silver Axe, like, what is that all about? I feel like he could create a really sick design out of that character. So I just don't feel like Oda would introduce these two very like unique characters to a legendary crew just to have them not reappear later in the story or not fleshed out at all. In a way, it's like Jian and Tokikake. Like, they were introduced as two people that almost got the admiral position, so like you would think they need to be showcased more so later on because of like how strong they potentially are. But like Silver Axe or Wang Zhi all of a sudden showing up in an arc or something could be a great way to like fill us in on like more of the backstory of the Rocks pirates. Here's a very interesting idea. What if one of them is the 10th captain for the Blackbeard pirates? Because, you know, Blackbeard rocks, that whole connection there. What if Blackbeard went out and recruited one of those legends? Now, again, they could be very old, or they could be closer to Kaido's age as well. Like, Kaido and Big Mom were also on that crew. They're both still, like, Big Mom's a little older, but Kaido still seems like he's in his prime. So Silver Axe and Wang Zhi could be in the same boat, and like a person of that power being added to Blackbeard's crew, that could be a great way to do it as well. So I definitely want to see those guys reintroduced into the story, learn a little bit more about like how they are as characters, how strong are they, and they'll definitely be featured in the Rocks Pirates flashbacks when we finally see them. Perhaps they are like the gateway for us to get more information on the Rocks Pirates. Not gonna lie, I'm really intrigued by those two characters and I want to see more of them in the future. But next, let's move on to the captain of the Rocks Pirates himself, Rox D. Xebec. And Rox, like, a lot of people thought he was dead. I, like, definitely believe he was dead in the beginning because he was erased from this world, which is kind of vague, but I really, like, want the next generation to take over. And when you already have, like, a big-time villain of a pirate like Blackbeard, you want him to take center stage as the villain. I don't think you need to pull in a person like Rox of the older generation to become like another pirate villain. But once again, Artur from the Library of Ohara opened my eyes with his Return to Reverie like project where he had Rox become Emu. Now that I didn't even think of as an option before, okay? But that is very interesting. So the idea is Rox like actually stole something from God Valley and then like kind of like hid himself and like sunk God Valley along with himself, but he's actually alive, and then he snuck into Marijois, showcased this great item, and then took over as the new king. That could be an interesting way to bring Rox back. I'm not mad at that. I actually really like that idea. Maybe it's because Return to the Reverie was very well written as a story that like that moment was pretty great for me as just a reader of that story. But it could definitely be carried out in an interesting way. But other than that, Rox just coming back as another villain for a pirate, I don't like that idea. I think Blackbeard as a pirate, like the challenge for the Pirate King, it should only be Blackbeard and Luffy at the end of the day. So Rox coming back, it's like up in the air for me. Now let's talk about some unconfirmed members of the Rocks Pirates, but like pretty much we think they're definitely going to be members of Rocks Pirates. Starting off with Shaki. Now Shaki is directly tied to Rayleigh. I think if Rayleigh comes back to the story, Shaki should come along, right? in that final battle, like this would be sick. Luffy and his allies and the Straw Hats are fighting the world government, and there's like an obstacle of some sort, and like they could definitely beat those guys, but Luffy has to move on ahead, and like time is like very important or something. They have to rush ahead, and then in comes Rayleigh, stops the obstacle, whoever they are. Maybe it's an admiral or something, or maybe we see Kizaru and Rayleigh rematch there. Power scalers are probably gonna get mad at me for that. It's just headcanon and the idea. I'm not actually saying Rayleigh would beat Kizaru, relax. But Rayleigh coming in and stopping Kizaru and like, oh, okay, Luffy, don't worry, I got you. You go ahead, do your thing. I got a little extra help here. And then we see Shaki coming in, and we get a Rayleigh and Shaki team up, and like we see Shaki actually in action and like how strong she is, because she was saying she was being chased by Garp before, and somebody who's with Rayleigh, you would think they'd be pretty strong as well. So yeah, that kind of badass team up entrance for Rayleigh and Shaki I feel like could work very well, but other than that, they're gonna be on the sidelines like with Rayleigh and Shaki. They got their moments already. They don't really need to interfere unless it's this like final big thing where Oda is just bringing out every single character into this war. Another unconfirmed member of the Rocks Pirates is Bakken. Bakken, who said she was on a crew with Whitebeard before. It has to be the Rocks Pirates, right? And Bakken is definitely still very prominent in the current story with the whole thing with Weevil. And I actually think she's going to be showcased in the next arc, because I think the Whitebeard Pirates and their story is going to be the focus point of the next arc. I mentioned this in my most recent video, but I think like the 4th Poneglyph could be possibly hidden in the Whitebeard territory. Then like Yamato having the journal could be the hint to that. And then Marco and maybe the Whitebeard Pirates as well, they meet up with the Straw Hats, they go to that island, and then they confront like Weevil and Bakken. We get that whole storyline resolved, because that we still need to see resolved. It has to be showcased with the Straw Hats and the Whitebeard Pirates all together, and that could be the next arc in my opinion for this Yonko saga. So Bakken, I feel like she could definitely get fleshed out in the next arc as an antagonist, and maybe she gives us some information and flashback about like Whitebeard in the Rocks crew, and like why he joined that crew, and how he like left the crew, and what kind of person he was in his younger days. That could definitely get fleshed out through Bakken. And I also want to see, is Bakken actually really strong, because she's like the size of a kickball? But if she's a member of the Rocks Pirates, she's definitely gonna be bodying people. Like she's gotta be no slouch if she's hanging around with that crew. But yeah, that's it for all the pirates. Now let's talk about some marine legends, because there are still some, and we'll start off with the two obvious ones, Garp and Sengoku. Obviously, both of these people have been given a lot of shine pre-time skip and in the story, and right now they're like done with it, right? They're both retired. After Marineford, they're kind of just tired of it all, and they're just over with it. But they're still definitely both very strong. Like even Marineford, they were held back a lot. They didn't really take action until the very end, but they were still hella strong. You saw Garp knock down Marco. He's definitely still very strong. Sengoku, although his hair is white all of a sudden in 2 years, and he's eating Cracker Jacks all the time now, he can still bust out that Buddha and body some people. And at this point, I'm not really even that interested with these two in their current power, because we've seen a little bit of that. It would be cool to see them like really go at it for like one last time, maybe in the end of the story, but I want to see more of them in their prime, and really in like their prime power. How strong were they? Because we've gotten like explanations of it, like Garp at God Valley and Sengoku and like Garp fighting Shiki and all that, but we haven't seen those fight scenes. Like Whitebeard and Roger, at least we've seen them clash a little bit with people like Odin and like the crazy hockey clashes. I want to see that for Garp and Sengoku. And I guess a little bit of Tsuru as well in those flashbacks, but in the current story, Tsuru, you know, it doesn't look like she's doing as well as the other two. In terms of them coming back into the main story, I think the best way and the only way to really do that is to have them be the leaders of Sword. A secret unit maybe going up against the world government, and now this really makes sense of them being connected to Sword, because the two people we've seen of Sword are Koby and X-Drake. X-Drake, who was saved by Sengoku, and then Koby, who's been trained by Garp. So it could make sense that they are leading it, or perhaps just part of it, and like, you know, the Marines eventually has to have a turnover of some sort, and a lot of people are expecting Sword to be that turnover in the next generation. So at the end of the final battle, we're getting like a clash against the world government. Maybe Garp and Sengoku and Sword begin to turn on the actual Marines, and really like we get to see them fight a little bit there. So that's what I want to see out of both of them, but Garp specifically, there's a lot to flesh out with his backstory, especially when Dragon finally gets like reintroduced and like fleshed out as a character, and we see his backstory and history and flashbacks and all that. I'm dying to see Garp and Dragon interact as like father and son when they were younger, what really happened there, and like was Garp super mad that Dragon went and became a revolutionary, or that his own son got a tattoo on his face. So yeah, with those two, I'm really just dying to see more flashbacks from them and like their history and like their strength in their prime. And then finally, one of the most mysterious Marines, and that is Kong, the current commander-in-chief, kind of the middleman between the Fleet Admiral and the Gorosei. He was the previous Fleet Admiral before Sengoku, but he also was kind of introduced in a side story, the same side story with Shiki. But besides that, he really hasn't been mentioned at all. Like even during the Oden flashback, Roger said like bring somebody like Garp and Sengoku. He didn't mention Kong at all. Like was Kong just not strong? Like what kind of person is he? What is his justice? And like him serving as the middleman for the world government, does he believe in the world government, or is he just like doesn't know everything either? I think he will definitely get a little more introduction and get his character fleshed out later, but I also don't think he's gonna play that big of a role given how he's been introduced and how little he's been mentioned. And one thing I will say, for those of you paying attention to the Netflix live adaptation that's going to be happening, I know like a month back there was a script kind of leaked and saying like Kong was going to be featured a little bit in that. So that could be a little glimpse of Kong there, and like Oda is a producer for that project, so it would be approved by him. But I definitely want to get a little more info from Kong and what kind of person he is, and see him like just reappear even for a little bit in the story. But that's everybody I could think of. What do you guys think? Do you think any of these people should reappear in the story? If so, how? And who you are most excited to see reappear in the story? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please hit that like button. Helps a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to keep up to date with when I'm posting new videos or doing live streams, probably doing, by the time this video goes up, doing a live reaction today. So to keep up with all that, you gotta hit the subscribe button. And as of this video going out, we should probably be at 2,100 subscribers, but YouTube is doing a weird thing. They might be purging subscribers, so I might not be at it. Like right now, it shows like 2,080 on like my like public page, but like on my analytics, it's showing like 230. So I'm a little confused at what's going on there. But either way, thank you guys for the support. Let's keep it moving. Remember, our next goal is 5,000 subscribers. Discord at 5K. Help us get there. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell to join the crew as well. Follow me on Twitter. I'm DKing4. Video for you right there. Playlist for you right there. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.